You don't stumble into Berlin by accident. You choose the long road, the thin air, and the feeling that the desert is guiding you to something it never fully gives back. Berlin doesn't look destroyed. It looks paused, like everyone stepped out for a moment, and the moment stretched into decades. This is where rock became hope. The mill turned stubborn stone into numbers, wages, supplies, and for a while, it made the town feel permanent. Here, you don't just look at buildings, you follow a story. Each step feels like reading a page the desert tried to erase, but couldn't finish. Berlin is quiet on purpose now. It sits inside a state park, protected, preserved, and left to teach visitors what work once demanded from the desert. Boarded windows aren't just to keep people out. They keep weather from finishing the job, so the town can stay here, half open, half asleep. Mining towns were built fast wood, tin, nails, and optimism. When the money moved on, the materials stayed behind to argue with time. The desert moves in quietly. It crosses thresholds, settles into corners, and turns rooms into exhibits where absence becomes the main artifact. Up here, the town's timeline turns personal. A few small markers remind you that mining wasn't just a job. It was risk, distance, and lives measured in seasons. This room was built for force-pounding rock into profit. Now it holds only stillness, like the town's engine was turned off and left exactly where it stopped. An assay is where dreams become numbers. One careful measurement could mean celebration, or the moment a whole town realizes the ground won't pay forever. Berlin sits beside a deeper story, ancient fossils preserved in the same harsh landscape. Human boomtown years feel tiny when you're standing next to millions of years. The store was where wages turned into meals, tools, and small comforts. When it closes, you feel how a town's daily life collapses faster than the buildings. These cabins weren't built to last only to survive. They held tired bodies, cold nights, and the belief that tomorrow's digging would finally be worth it. This metal once carried rock that carried hope. Now it's just a skeleton proof that the work was real, even if the promise didn't last. A saloon used to hold the town's loudest hours, stories, arguments, laughter. Without voices, the room feels too big, like it's still waiting for the night to begin. This road wasn't made for sightseeing. It was made for labor boots, ore, and the daily climb that turned a town's hope into muscle and dust. The mine doesn't look like a place that gives. It looks like a mouth silent and dark where people once stepped in, trusting that the ground would pay them back. Rust is time made visible. It spreads slowly, like the desert rewriting every surface until even strong metal looks tired. A window used to separate inside from outside warmth, from weather. Now it's just a frame for the desert, turning every room into a lookout point. Every ghost town had a moment it tried to become permanent, teaching kids, planning futures. These steps feel like the start of that dream, left unfinished. A tin cup is nothing until you imagine the hands that held it. In a mining camp, small objects carried the weight of long days. Not everyone here had a home, just a place to sleep between shifts. A boarding house turns strangers into neighbors until the pay runs out and everyone scatters. A town ledger is where life becomes math, wages, supplies, debts. When the numbers stop adding up, the town becomes a memory with receipts. A stove is a promise of warmth after work. When it's cold forever, you can feel the winters that once pressed against these walls. Fast-built towns still carry fingerprints, hammer marks, quick fixes, rough carpentry. You can read the urgency in every nail. Ore used to pour out like a paycheck in motion. Now the chute points at empty ground, as if the town is still waiting for one last shipment of luck. Not every moment here was work. A porch swing hints at evenings, resting bodies, tired laughter, and a few minutes where the mine felt far away. A main street is a promise of community trades, gossip, and everyday needs. In Berlin, the street still exists, but the purpose has dissolved. Some labor never leaves a place. A single pick mark is a signature proof that someone stood here, swung hard, and believed the rock would answer. In mining country, water is survival. A barrel like this once meant planning, rationing, and respect for every drop the desert allowed. Glass holds onto light long after the party ends. In a ghost town, even the smallest sparkle feels like an echo of human noise. This is where the mine became a planned shifts arranged, tools counted, wages calculated. The room is small, but the decisions here shape the whole town. When a roof disappears, a building stops being shelter and starts being scenery. The desert doesn't knock, it simply steps inside. Before electricity, light was work too. A lantern meant one more hour awake, one more hour of planning, repairing, or simply enduring the night. Tailings are what the mind couldn't use mountains of almost. In a ghost town, they're proof of how much earth was moved for a dream. Before trucks, the town ran on animals hauling, carrying, surviving the terrain. A stable like this reminds you how physical every mile of life once was. In the desert, even rain feels like an event. Imagine how it sounded on tin roofs, brief relief, then dust again, and the work continuing as if nothing happened. Dust keeps a record for a while. Boot prints are like a sentence someone walked through, paused, and then the town kept forgetting them, one gust at a time. From above, Berlin looks small, almost gentle. But every building down there was built by hard days, thin margins, and the hope that the ground would keep paying. In a mining town, repair was survival. A blacksmith didn't just fix tools, he kept the entire place moving, one bent piece of iron at a time. This counter once heard everything: deals, lies, laughter, confessions. Now it only hears the wind, repeating the town's emptiness in slow breaths. After a shift, clean water was a luxury. A wash basin like this holds the idea of relief scrubbing off dust, trying to feel human again. Today, Berlin is held in place by a boundary state park protection. It's a rare kind of mercy, the chance to decay slowly, where people can still learn. Old floors remember weight. Every creak feels like a replay, boots coming home, footsteps crossing rooms, life moving through spaces that now belong to air. Food was simple here, stored, shared, stretched. An empty shelf shows you the economics of survival and how quickly the everyday disappears when a town empties. A bell once told the town when to start, when to stop, when danger was near. Now it doesn't ring, and the silence feels like the final announcement. In a ghost town, light becomes a narrator. It shows what's left, what's broken, and what's still strangely beautiful in the dust. A laundry line means routine washing, drying, planning for another week. In Berlin, the wind is the only thing that still works this line. Even a mining town needed care, injuries, sickness, exhaustion. A doctor's bag reminds you that survival here was always stitched together, day by day. Boots tell the truth of a place. These look like they carried weight for years, until one day, someone didn't put them on again. A windmill is supposed to turn effort into water. Here, it turns wind into sound, another reminder that the town's needs outlasted the town itself. A hallway like this once held dozens of lives, workers sleeping, waking, leaving before sunrise. Now it's only doors and distance, like the town forgot the sound of names. Mining is a search for invisible geometry veins, layers, promises under stone. A map like this is the town's plan for tomorrow, even when tomorrow never arrives. This gear once lifted ore, tools, and sweat from the dark. Now it lifts nothing, just holding the shape of work in the open air. Sunset makes everything look gentle, like the town is being forgiven. But the quiet is still honest. Berlin is here, preserved in light, not in living. A school desk is where the town tried to grow a future. The dust on it feels like a pause button, pressed the day families realized the mind couldn't hold them anymore. Mining camps ran on rules: safety, order, pay, behavior. When the mine closed, the rules didn't break. They simply stopped mattering. In Berlin, water wasn't background, it was strategy. A tank like this meant planning for heat, for storms, for days when the desert didn't cooperate. The town still makes sounds, just not human ones. A porch creak becomes a sentence, and the wind becomes the voice that finishes it. This road was built for hauling rock out, supplies in. Now it's a path for visitors, walking through the leftovers of a gamble that reshaped the land. A mine opening looks calm from a distance. Up close, it feels like a boundary between daylight and risk, between the town above and the darkness that fed it. Life here depended on simple things: holding ropes, knots, beams, trust. A frayed line is a reminder that failure was always close. Today, Berlin is walked like a museum without walls. The trail guides you gently so the town can be remembered without being disturbed. This counter once turned ore money into necessities. In a mining town, trade was survival, and every purchase was a bet that the mine would still pay tomorrow. Boomtowns needed order as much as they needed luck. A quiet office like this held the town's rules until the town itself stopped needing enforcement. Timbers kept the underground world from collapsing. Seeing them in daylight feels strange, like the mine's hidden bones are finally exposed. At dusk, the town looks almost inhabited until you listen. Berlin's nights are owned by wind, stars, and the memory of work. A closed door is a simple thing until it never opens again. In Berlin, every latch feels like a question the town stopped answering. A bunkhouse didn't offer comfort, just rest. This window once framed tomorrow's shift, the same mountains, the same risk, and the same hope for a better strike. These rails were built for constant movement, or rolling out, supplies rolling in. When the mine stopped, the tracks kept pointing forward, but nothing followed. Wallpaper is an attempt to make a hard place feel gentle. Seeing it fade like this reminds you that even comfort was temporary in a town built on extraction. Some towns have a square where life gathers. Berlin gathered around the mine instead, so when the work died, the center of the town vanished with it. A pay window turns work into proof cash, receipts, survival for another week. When it closes, it feels like the town's future got sealed behind wood. That whistle once divided the day into part start, break, end. Now it never sounds, and time in Berlin feels wide and unmeasured. Berlin isn't a ghost story. It's an economic story, how quickly a town can rise on ore, and how quietly it can fall when the numbers turn. From here, you can see how isolated the town really was. Distance wasn't scenery, it was part of the price of mining, paid every day. When tools disappear, the work disappears with them. This wall is a negative image showing exactly what the town used to be. Firewood means someone was planning to stay warm, planning for nights, for winter, for tomorrow. Left like this, it feels like a plan interrupted mid-sentence. In an empty town, you start listening differently. The smallest sound becomes a message, and the silence feels like the only resident left. Here, the ghost town is part of a park, so the story has a guide. The desert still wears the place down, but slowly, under watch. A chair like this held tired bodies making hard choices: stay, leave, invest, quit. Now it sits empty, like the decision was made and the town accepted it. The mill is like a skeleton on the hillside bones of an industry that once fed a town. It doesn't move, but it still explains everything. Every ghost town has the same final direction: out. The road doesn't judge the dream, it just carries you back to the present. In places like Berlin, dust becomes visible, turning light into something you can almost touch. It's the closest thing to motion the town still allows. Now, the only regular footsteps here belong to visitors. The town isn't alive, but it's not forgotten either. It's watched, quietly, like a fragile museum. Berlin runs on desert time now, slower, wider, and indifferent. You don't rush it. You match it, and let the quiet explain what the town used to be. Berlin sits beside a deeper story, ancient life, preserved in stone. Next to that kind of time, a mining boomtown feels like a blink, and the silence feels earned. The park doesn't bring Berlin back to life. It simply keeps the remains from disappearing too fast, so you can stand here and feel how fragile a town can be. Berlin is a quiet warning. When a place depends on one boom, it can fade fast. The desert doesn't celebrate, it just keeps going.